Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Akhil and I'm the co-founder of Green Story, and welcome to this very special webinar series on the new normal. The series was set up to help anyone in the eco-fashion space navigate and come out stronger after COVID-19. We're kicking things off with this amazing panel today. We'll be hearing from 4 leaders in the eco-fashion space on how they're navigating the uncertainty in the market due to COVID-19 and the role of sustainability in all of this. If you have any questions during the panel, please type them out in the question box below in Zoom, and we'll get to them after the discussion. If you do want to take part in the discussion online on social media, please use the hashtag #NewNormal or GreenStory, or DM us or message us directly at @GreenStory Inc. on any of the platforms. A little bit about me. I have 13 years of experience in the sustainability space, having previously worked on the carbon offsets, consumer sustainability, and corporate strategy space. We co-founded Green Story 5 years ago to help consumers make more sustainable choices, which is something this panel is going to be about a lot as well. And our vision is to enable every consumer to ask, what's my impact? As a company, we work with brands from startups to global giants to measure the impact of their supply chains and visualize it for their customers. On the right, you'll find a really quick example of what we do. This is the product page of one of our clients, No Nasties. We have calculated the impact of their organic cotton items, compared it against a conventional item, and shown it at point of sale through clear, arresting infographics. I would like to thank the amazing panel that's joining us today, and here they are. Starting with our moderator, Derek Sabori. Derek is the founder and lead guide at the Underswell School of Understanding, an educational platform offering courses focused on sustainability and the triple bottom line. When he's not teaching and sharing advice to students, Derek is also the co-founder at Cosm, helping to build a new premium yoga goods brand for men that's founded on sustainability. In his own words, he's on the hustle and enjoying every moment of this. With this, I'll turn the panel over to Derek.
Awesome. Thank you, Akhil. Thank you. Thank you. So good to be here. We've got a great panel today, and we've got a lot of great topics to cover. So with that, I'll dive right in and introduce our panel, give you their bios, tell you a little bit about them. They're coming all from different parts of the world, actually. But we've got Sam Blumenthal from Long Island, New York right now. Sam from ThredUp. She's the senior manager, marketing communications person at ThredUp. And ThredUp is the world's largest fashion resale marketplace with over 35,000 brands in their offering. It's an important contributor to the rethinking of commerce, and she and her team are inspiring a new generation to think secondhand first. Sam has been in PR in the apparel industry for the last 10 years and will be able to give us great insights into customer behavior and expectations in this exciting space during these unprecedented times. Thanks for being here, Sam.
Thank you.
All right. And then Stephen Bethel. Stephen's dialing in off grid, southwest of Ottawa, somewhere in the forest, deep in the forest. He told us that he's off grid. Stephen is the president and partner at Bank and Vogue, the leader in the global used goods market. And he's the creative director at Beyond Retro, the leading vintage retailer across the UK and Sweden. Stephen is a thought leader and a pioneer in the post-consumer textile space who's been traveling the world, working in this space and developing business models in it for over 20 years. So really looking forward to getting a global perspective from his experience. Stephen, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
You bet. And then last but not least, Kim Matsoukas. Kim, she's calling in from Huntington Beach, California. She is the senior manager of sustainability at the world famous brand Vans, making the coolest shoes since 1966. Vans is part of the VF Corporation, VF Corp suite of brands, one of the world's largest apparel, footwear, and accessories companies with socially, environmentally responsible operations. And Kim is a well-known sustainability professional with 14 years of experience in sustainability, strategy, assessment, project, and program management. Her insights from one of the strongest brands in retail will no doubt make for a great conversation today. Glad to have you, Kim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so let's dive in. We've got a list of questions here that we're going to go through, and I'm sure we'll have some questions from our audience. But first, I guess my first question is, we're in an unprecedented situation because this is a sustainability themed panel and discussion. Can you guys give us a sense of what momentum was like for your sustainability programs and the initiatives that you had in place before the pandemic? And what was the spirit like? What were things like before this all started? Maybe Sam, I'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so that's a really interesting question for me coming from ThredUp because we are a secondhand retailer. So sustainability is core to our business. That is definitely not going anywhere. We're dedicated to powering the circular economy and keeping as many items as possible in use in people's closets and out of landfills. Um, but things are definitely looking different now, beyond just like that core mission staying the same. We had been seeing a ton of traction with our resale as a service platform. We call it RAS. So we spent the past 10 years making it really easy for consumers to clean out their closets and access quality secondhand clothing online. And then we recently opened that up to retailers. So we were really excited about that going into 2020. We were about to launch our annual resale report, which will now be coming out in June, but like literally about to launch it into the world when this all happened. And then we had to take a quick step back and say, is this relevant at this moment? Do people want to hear about this right now? We were also really energized around fighting single-use fashion with a couple of campaigns around Coachella, the Met Gala. So all of these things that sort of don't exist right now, or at least not in the same way. So that was very, very interesting for us as a team that is planning our content calendar far in advance to see the rug swept out from under us and having to pivot and react really every single day. I think it's only now that we're starting to feel more in a rhythm of things. And it was interesting for our team to have to, it's sad in a way, like you get so excited about these initiatives and you either have to scrap them completely or rethink them and reshape them for what makes sense now. So there was some disappointment, definitely some excitement also, which is interesting. Ultimately, I think it's safe to say we're operating in the same spirit of what we were doing before, but a very different looking execution.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll talk about the pivot a little bit next. Kim, how about you guys at Vans? What was the spirit like? I know you've been chipping away at a lot of things for years now, but what kind of things what was the momentum like over there in sustainability for you guys?
There was a lot of momentum coming out of 2019. So we actually, at the very end of 2019, announced our science-based targets on climate, some of the most aggressive in the industry. And so that was over a year's worth of work from various people around VF. And so there was a lot of excitement about the fact that we did it. We were able to measure and set real targets. And so there was a lot of momentum to start, building plans to meet those targets. We also, at the same time, released our sustainable materials vision, which focuses quite a bit on regenerative agriculture as a way to combat climate change. So there was starting to be a lot of momentum around that, working with our teams at the brands, our product teams at the brands on what that means and how we can start to implement that at the brand level. So there was quite a bit of momentum. We also just came up on, the 2-year anniversary of VF releasing their first real sustainability strategy called Made for Change. And there was, with the shift towards regenerative agriculture and our new sustainable materials vision, there was some appetite to start to look at refreshing our entire sustainability strategy. So I would say, we had the most momentum of any point since I've been at Vans, which is, I've been here about 8 years. And so there was definitely a lot going on.
Well, it'll be good. So that's for the story arc here for you guys that are listening. So we're going to kind of dive into what was going on before what it's like now, hopefully get a little sense of what's to come. Stephen, how about you from a really global perspective? I know you spent a lot of time working all over the world with different partners. What's your sense? What was the momentum and the spirit like, kind of right up into the lead up of things, and how were your feelings? And we'll dive into a little bit later where you're at now, but what was your momentum like going into this?
Yeah, our company, our parent company, Bank and Vogue, focuses on selling and finding homes, creative homes for the used clothes that can't be sold in thrift stores in the United States. And so we basically are moving volumes of used clothes, about 70 containers a week of secondhand clothes. One of the places we move them is in our own vintage stores at Beyond Retro and in both the UK and Sweden. And sales have been fantastic. And some of our initiatives, like our upcycling factory, where we are taking used clothes that can't be resold immediately, we were putting in our shops. And so on a very obvious level, sales pre-COVID were really strong in both the vintage and the upcycled. We also had 3 significant partnerships that we pre-COVID that were really exciting to us. One, we worked with a company called Renewcell, which is a Swedish-based chemical recycler. Yeah. And we have been the supplier of the post-consumer denim into that process. And, H&M launched the dress that they made from the post-consumer denim that they had reworked in Sweden. And that launched actually in March 26th. But we were really excited about having the first example of an industrial scale chemical recycled cotton back into a new fiber. And then just 2 other things that we were excited about pre-COVID. One was we launched a Homewares collection with Made.com, which is a British high-end homeware, where we taken post-consumer denim and made a range of pillows, cushion covers, and sofa covers. And that range, we were really excited about that landing. And of course, pre-COVID, we were really excited about our launch of and the work we did with Converse to supply post-consumer apparel for the upper of their classic Chuck Taylor. So in last year, we did 2 drops. There was another drop in the spring of the Converse shoe made from post-consumer denim. And for us, that was we were generally excited. There are 3 or 4 good examples of real successes and real innovations in how do you take post-consumer textiles and turn them back into something. And these were all really positive steps towards what I think we're all working towards, which is this idea of a circular economy. So in short, we have some really great stuff pre-COVID on the board. We're really excited about them launching.
Well, yeah, there was so much momentum. I mean, we're talking, we're approaching circularity, and we're talking about science-based targets and regenerative agriculture, getting deep in our supply chains and re-commerce and all these new business models. I felt like, it was a really exciting time. But so here we are now, we're 2 months into this global shutdown with uncertainty that's just been poured all over all of us. And so I guess my question is now, what's the update now, with whether it's with those programs, just in general, the vibe, and what have you learned, and have you had to pivot? Sam, can I go back to you, and can you address those things? What have you learned? What's your update now, and have you had to pivot?
Sure. Yes. So one of the things I love about ThredUp that's kept me engaged here for the past 3 years is that we are masters of the pivot. And we are, we've been around for 10 years, which is longer than a lot of people think. We have close to 2,000 employees, but we're still able to move really fast. So I think in general, there was just like this rallying spirit of seeing everyone at every point in the organization having to move really fast and pivot and execute. So there was a lot of camaraderie happening there. As a business, we pride ourselves on democratizing sustainability, and this is true now more than ever. So we're seeing that a lot of people there's a lot of economic uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty about people's health and well-being. So people are being very, very thoughtful, more so than ever, about how they spend their money. And something that we felt really good about at ThredUp is that core value prop still remains and is potentially truer now than it was before. So in thinking about this panel specifically, it doesn't have to be a choice between the planet or a choice between your wallet. What we've always said at ThredUp is that you can have both. So you can make the responsible choice for yourself and your family right now, and it can also happen to be the choice that's really good for the planet. In general, in communications, we've been focusing on the service that we provide to our customers and really emphasizing that. So, it's a really cluttered time. And again, people are thinking about a lot of other things besides shopping and where they're shopping and how they're shopping. So first of all, I think we're really fortunate to be able to lean into clean out at ThredUp. And we've been talking about that a lot as a way to gain some peace of mind and also earn a little bit of cash. And we make it really easy for you to clean out without leaving your home. And if you're shopping for yourself or your family, again, we offer this very responsible choice with a ton of value attached to it. Another thing that's been really interesting for us that I mentioned before with our RAS platform is, yes, we had to put some of the splashier campaigns aside. And it just, some things didn't feel right to talk about in this moment. But in general, we have seen potentially accelerated interest from our partners, if not at least the same level of interest, because being able to tell a green story and being able to offer this service to your customers, being able to say like, hey, you might not want to shop right now, but you can clean out and feel really good about it and earn some credit for when you're ready to shop later. And tell that story to your customers, a story that they are actually interested in and does some good for them, is something that retailers have been very eager to be able to communicate. So that fortunately has still continued to see growth, and we're really excited to be able to tell an Earth Day story with our launch of retail partnerships with Reebok and Abercrombie. It's interesting. It's been a huge pivot, but there are also some things that just remain true now more so than ever.
I think that's really interesting, that idea that you guys can provide a service as well as be a service provider. I mean, in two ways. I mean, that's a really interesting business model when you're faced with a situation like this. Kim, for you guys, have you had to pivot? Have things changed? Or is momentum steady and all courses ahead?
Yeah, I mean, because Vans and VF are global organizations, we've actually been dealing with this since January. And each one of our regions is at a different stage. And so the sustainability team is global as well. And so it's just been an interesting experience to have people be at different stages while we're all trying to get on the same page around this new strategy that we're trying to build.
Yeah,
I would say from a sustainability perspective, we're not going to deviate very much from our science-based targets and our sustainable materials vision. Those were meant to be very long-term and things that we were going after for the next 10 years. One really interesting thing I think that is going to change for everyone in this space is the renewed focus on biodiversity as an impact. As most big companies, we have been mostly focused on climate change. Climate change is obviously, even with a pandemic, it's still the most dangerous, challenge that we're going to have to face as a human race, I believe. And COVID is sort of the very fast climate change. Like climate change is this slow-moving pandemic And so we know we're going to have to continue to focus on climate change. But I think COVID has kind of reintroduced this idea that we do have impacts on biodiversity in our value chain. And traditionally, those have been very hard to measure, right? Because biodiversity is so localized, and we often don't have visibility all the way down to the farm level or the, rubber tree plantation level. But it's very clear that, pandemics are increased with a decrease in biodiversity. And so I think, biodiversity is going to be a topic for the next few years that anyone working in this space is going to have to start to think about. It's not going to be enough to just say, oh, we can't measure it. We're going to have to figure out ways to at least measure our impact and try to figure out how can we reduce our impact on biodiversity.
Yeah, really interesting point. It feels like it's all the picture is becoming more and more clear, for those of us that study it and know it. And when you start making those connections, I always start my students off with those concepts of biodiversity, natural capital, ecosystems, and ecosystem services. So to your point, right, without a healthy planet, there's no healthy people. Without healthy people, there's no healthy planet. So
and they're all interconnected, right? Like if we're protecting biodiversity, we're going to also be protecting, reducing our impact on climate change. And with our focus on regenerative agriculture, I think biodiversity is a natural kind of metric to start to measure as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Stephen, how about you? For you, have things changed? Is there a pivot going on? What have you learned coming out of this, or does it feel like business somewhat as normal as far as your supply chain goes?
Yeah, operating in the secondhand space and buying from private collectors and charities across the United States, a lot of those shut down. So our supply, as a company, our job is to figure out what to do with the post-consumer textiles that are surplus to charities and thrift stores. As they shut down, there was obviously a lack of supply, but then because they had shut down, there was a lot of raw material available that had not gone through thrift stores. So that we refer to them as credentials. So a lot of private collectors kept picking up product. So the really fun thing, and I kind of to ThredUp's point, this is at times like this is when innovators innovate. So because of the work that we had done with Converse, we'd invested a lot in equipment to sanitize post-consumer textiles to a certain grade. And that allowed us to pivot our factory to start making masks, which we did from post-consumer textiles. I mean, one of the unwritten stories I think out of this was there's a lot of throwaway product being generated right now out of this situation. But we wanted to could we take the assets in front of us? As a company, we've sort of focused of, can we solve world problems using post-consumer textiles from secondhand clothes? And because we had the investment of the sanitization equipment, we started making masks. And frankly, we just gave them away in India to where our factory is. So it's about and trying to get that. It was an interesting process during COVID to be able to get permission to have the factory open, because India had staunch lockdown procedures. So it was, what could we do to get to help with the situation, used as frankly a tool for the better. But kind of looking a little bit commercially, what was amazing to us is our e-commerce sales have doubled and if not tripled, so that our European customers have turned to e-commerce to as an offering. So beyondretro.com, our sales have been really strong online, like amazingly. But on a longer term, on some of our projects, there's been a lot of conversations about brands canceling forward orders. And I can proudly say that the brands that we're working with have actually really walked us through this process and have doubled down on their commitment to sustainable projects. And a really good example is we do upcycling for Urban Outfitters in the UK and in the US. And they've reached out and said, look, we had orders in the pipe. We really want those as soon as you can get them. And as soon as you can get factory back online, we want to continue with those orders. And the same could be said for the other brands we're working for. And a good example is the Renew Cell project. We've had conversations through them. And somehow I think it's incredibly comforting that our enthusiasm pre-COVID for these innovations are carrying through past COVID. So, I mean, obviously, and the other immediate, of course, is that we're getting a lot of phone calls from brands saying, we have a lot of overstock. Do you have any suggestions of what we can do with them? And being a company that finds home for products, repairs products, and upcycles products, we're in kind of a unique space to offer some solutions to brands that are really kind of swimming in product. That's sort of the immediate, what do we do right away? What's sort of the business impact? And then kind of the near future to us, frankly, looks really encouraging.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think, so I like how the stories I'm hearing of everybody kind of rushing in to help, whether it's masks or providing new services for customers. And maybe on top of that, and in general, are there silver linings though? I mean, this has been a really tough time. And I would imagine, for whether it's employees or just, your retail partners or business partners in general, families, personal, but are there silver linings though that you guys are finding? And it sounds like maybe a couple have come about already, but any silver linings that you're finding from either the shutdown, this new way of thinking, or just kind of putting things into a new perspective? Kind of leave it open for anybody that wants to jump on that. Kim?
I mean, I would say for me, I think it's this crisis is showing what I try to instill in everyone I talk to, which is we are not islands in ourselves, and our actions affect other people, and eventually they affect nature as well. And so for me, I think it's much easier to see that connection now. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic for some people to realize it. But I think for me, that's a big silver lining. I would say the other thing is that we talk about using technology to cut down on travel and things like that. But I think pre-COVID, there wasn't, I think people really didn't, it was mostly talk. And now I think it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what's going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see if that mindset goes back to where it was before or not. I have a feeling that we are going to be a little less, eager to get on planes and to go talk about things when we've seen now that we actually can work pretty effectively remotely.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, right? Because it was often just the opposite, right? It's like, you know what, just get on a plane, book a flight, we'll get over there and we'll get it, knocked out. And for some reason, everybody had these great conference rooms but it was only felt like a last resort sometimes. So I think that'll be interesting to see as well. Sam or Stephen, any silver linings you want to share or talk about?
Yeah, first of all, Kim, completely agree with everything that you just said. And I'm also similarly curious to see that we've been having a lot of conversations about that at ThredUp. Like people are, like you said, traveling less and realizing we can have events like this virtually, and being thriftier and more resourceful in their own homes. And we actually, right before this all happened, we had launched a fashion footprint calculator that we worked with Green Story on, that was calculating the impact of these little habits that you have in how you take care of your clothing, how you buy your clothing. So there was a lot about e-com versus in-store, hang drying your clothing versus drying it, mending an item versus throwing it away, and how do you dispose of your clothing ultimately. And so these are all things that people are naturally having to adopt during this time when everyone's stuck at home, and realizing how resourceful they can be when they're not able to outsource everything, and have access to everything all the time. So yeah, I'm very curious, and I hope that one of the silver linings is that some of those thrifty habits really persist in people's lives in the long term. Another thing on a personal note that's been really interesting for me is that if this was a live panel, you guys would be able to see that I'm 8 months pregnant. So just
Congratulations.
it's like, it's been really interesting. And Derek, you mentioned I'm in Long Island because I'm at my in-laws. Clearly I'm like in a guest bedroom right now. So I think just like that adaptability and being able, for those of us who are fortunate to be well and be with our families right now, being able to see the silver lining in things, and the fact that I've been able to forego my commute and have dinner with my husband and my in-laws every single night. And I think similarly, it's just brought out the humanity in people who understand, like, this is a weird time to be working, and just rethinking like how you communicate with your coworkers, how you communicate with your customers. For me, I'm constantly speaking externally to media, and then internally on like various teams throughout the company. So just having that level of humanity and compassion that I hope also persists, and allows people to really see the good in things, and laugh where you can.
Yeah. Stephen, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just let me just trump Sam's 8-month thing. We had a new granddaughter that was born last Sunday.
Wow.
So you're all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God, just like, it's not trumping it, Sam, it's adding to it. I'm teasing. But I was like, out of all of this, it was like, oh my goodness, just, yeah, it kind of brings back. And to Kimberly's point about the travel, somebody, I think I went to India 7 times last year. I'm not sure if it's silver lining for my wife, but she said, I think you've been home like in the last 60 days more than you've been home in the last 6 months. So it was that was really positive. But from a work point of view, some of the projects that we've done, I don't know, somehow there was an incredible sense of camaraderie when we delivered the mask to the local, authority. Out of this somehow, it's those shining moments. You think, oh, this is I'm really lucky to be surrounded by the team that we are. And frankly, seeing how we can all help and work our way through it absolutely has been a real charm. I think, I'm really hopeful as well that there will be a new kind of way in which we can all not just communicate but work together, and you kind of sense that the tone is generally changed. There is a new kind of tone. Somehow I feel like the post-COVID tone feels a lot more human than pre-COVID.
Yeah, I agree completely. And one of my questions that I'm going to get to, but not yet, but I'm going to plan it for you guys, is that idea of going back to normal, right? We've been talking about this normal, but was normal even really that good? And is this where we're at now? Is this something that we can really build on? And I think it is. And I think what this has done is just like sort of leveled this playing field for us and made us all realize, yeah, we are just human. And our dogs might run in the background, our kids might jump in our laps, and who knows what's going on. But I really agree. But kind of back to business, I think for sustainability in general, sustainability and social responsibility, and we were in this disruptive phase of really focusing on, like each of you are doing, whether it's re-commerce, circularity, diving into our supply chains, focusing on climate change and communicating with our customers, those things. But I think reaching this sort of pinnacle moment, and then the rug gets pulled out from us, like you said. But for you guys, the big question that everybody wants to know, and we're reading about it, everybody's asking, but will sustainability continue to play an integral role, I guess, in your brand, in the industry? What's your opinion? And if it will, how so? And where will it go from here? What can you share?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephen. Or Sam, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, Sam, go ahead.
I was just gonna piggyback off of what you just said before, about just the new way that we're all working together and communicating. And I think that it's really underscoring the importance of collaboration, and being a sustainable business or becoming a sustainable business, which I know a lot of big retailers want to do. And Kim, I'm sure you have like a much better perspective on this than I do, but like a lot of retailers really want to do the right thing and become sustainable, but it's really hard the bigger you get and the more practices you have in place. And so, and fashion in general as an industry, I think, has been really tech averse, is just now coming to embrace sustainability in a bigger way, and has been kind of like isolated. And it was all predicated on seasonal deliveries and overproduction and overconsumption. And I am I do believe that through all of this, it's becoming more and more clear that collaboration is so important. At ThredUp, we work with Bank and Vogue to responsibly recycle some of the clothing we get that we cannot resell. We work with retailers, and so I think just that general spirit of collaboration and realizing that this cannot change in a vacuum and we all need to work together is something important that will certainly persist.
Yeah, Kimberly, did you want to say something? I'm going to jump in.
Sure. I would just echo what Sam said and just say that, we are not going to be abandoning sustainability in any way. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if this actually accelerated our efforts just because, Gen Z already is the generation that cares the most about climate change. And, I think that's because they are going to be the ones to inherit the consequences. And, I think this pandemic just kind of shows again how interconnected we all are, and their feelings about climate change are probably going to become more intense, which means they're going to expect more from the brands they purchase from. So if anything, I think this will it'll move sustainability up on the priority list for many brands.
I like that. Good to hear. I hope so. Stephen?
Yeah, I think there's, I kind of take the view in terms of what does the future look like. I feel like the next few months are going to be really messy, and difficult, frankly. You've got retailers with a lot of excess stock. And it's funny, there's a lot of conversation about the excess stock in retailers' shops, but it's also, the problem is it's the wrong stock. Like a lot of what consumers are buying when they're buying online, they're buying basics, they're buying home comfy clothes. They're not buying sparkly floral dresses to wear out at night. So it's not just that there's an excess amount of inventory that we're going to have to deal with, but there's also the wrong kind of inventory that's on hand. And also there's a real economic problem. And we're obviously all going to, have to figure out, which is how is the consumer going to behave, with economic downturn. What are the real pressures? What will the new shopping habits be? Will there be shopping habits? But putting the sort of immediate aside, as I kind of alluded to before, I'm given a lot of excitement about the brands that we were working pre-COVID have said, look, steady the course. We're not reducing our orders. We want to, as soon as you can get safely back to work, let's get the product back in the pipe. And all of our product efforts were about upcycling product, about supplying product for recycling purposes from post-consumer textiles. And those calls have certainly been reassuring, but I also think we just got to be really honest. The brands, all of the brands, all the retailers, it's not going to be an easy time, and that all of that has a knock-on effect to all of our efforts, including sustainability.
Yeah, Well, I hope, that all this can stay and stick around. And is there any thought about that, though, this idea of what normal was? Is there a sense that we will just kind of go right back? I mean, we've kind of touched on it, but I just wonder if we want to expand on that idea of what do you hope changes the most? What do we want to break? And when it comes to the going back to normal, what does the new normal look like? What should it look like? And what can we take now and build on? Sam, you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. I think that it's a little bit of what we've all been saying, which is, and Stephen, you were talking about like no one's buying the sparkly dress right now. And there's just too much stuff. And, as a consumer myself, I'm not going to stop buying things, but I feel an urge to be more thoughtful about what I'm buying and how I'm buying it, and like how it was made and how I'm going to dispose of it in the future. And we know from the research that we've done at ThredUp that a lot of consumers are feeling that way. As Kim mentioned, Gen Z is a huge driving force behind this idea of just, being thoughtful about how you make your clothes, how you sell your clothes, the message that you're sending with the clothing that you put on your body. So I hope that in the future we realize like we cannot produce this much stuff. We cannot buy this much stuff. And yes, clothing can change your mood. It can help you feel really good. Sometimes you want to wear that sparkly dress, and that is fine. But single-use fashion has got to go. Something that is really, speaking of silver linings, not that I would celebrate anyone's failure, but fast fashion was already on its way out, I think, or at least like changing drastically in big part due to Gen Z, and other options like resale emerging where people can access the same quality and value and fun and variety of fast fashion without all of that waste. So, and we're seeing now with the impact of COVID, like those brands are really struggling because they have so much inventory that they're just sitting on right now. And they're not paying the people who make it, and they're not supporting the ecosystem that's surrounding their business. But I think that the scary thing for me is that smaller brands are really suffering, and like the middle of the market is really suffering. So I don't really have an answer to this necessarily, but we also have to think about like at the end of this, we don't want it to just be the big brands that are left. And we have to figure out, again, going back to that spirit of collaboration, just like how to support each other so that there is more diversity out there, and more new ideas coming in. And that's something that we do think about a lot at ThredUp, is like how can we support these partners, and how can we fund what is really the future of fashion and circularity.
Yeah. Kim, you want to jump in? What, got anything on that? Speaking of big brands.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Sam said, which is my hope is, I don't know what's going to happen. My hope is that the new normal is more thoughtful approach to buying, to brands that are producing. I was thinking about this as a silver lining personally, and this kind of goes to that point about being more thoughtful. I realized during the course of this quarantine, like how much food I was wasting before. And, I'm a sustainability professional. I should really be pretty thoughtful about that, but I wasn't. And now that I'm only going grocery shopping every couple of weeks, I'm doing a lot better. So that's like one example of that. And I really think that that's going to continue to flow through even after quarantine is over. I'm just going to be a lot more thoughtful about my food waste. And I think the same probably applies to every industry. And I hope that it starts to apply to apparel and footwear, because, in order to really move the needle on a lot of the issues that we're facing in our industry from an environmental perspective, we need consumers who are thoughtful.
I agree. Stephen, you want to add to that? Is there anything to jump on?
Yeah, I think it's funny. A lot of the conversation or we hear this debate about evolution versus revolution and which camp do you sit in. I think that the part of this silver lining conversation is the Kims of the world sitting around tables. I think what I'm excited about is that they're going to have a louder voice, and people will be like, hey, you know, this has gotta be you know, more listened to. So the idea of what the normal was before and what a new normal could look like, as you know, kind of sitting around the table with some of the partners that we've been working with to slowly evolve these processes. I mean, one of the challenges is that the supply chains, you know, in some cases are 18 to 20 months long. So you're not going to end up with a revolutionary way to do things, to be the real hard work to change the way things can be made in a more sustainable way or consumed in a more sustainable way. Really is about our really long-term processes that are about evolution. So I sit on the evolutionary camp on that, but I think what's really exciting is that the Kims of the world and the other sustainability people that sit around tables will be able to have a larger impact on what that evolution can look like, and how the products will look coming out of it, and how can those world supply chain processes, which take a long time to change, you know, for used to be an input to new manufacturing, that's just it's a lot more complicated than it sounds. But I think that evolution had started, but I think it's going to just hyper accelerate on the way out, but it's still going to be a slow evolution. Change is going to come, but this is a long-term play, not an immediate one. Also want to just put out a shout for the sparkle dress, because I think every Saturday night should a sparkle dress should be worn. I'm just going to throw that out, even at home.
Sparkle Zoom meetings or something like that.
Sam, I have a discount voucher for you for free sparkle dresses.
Anything with sparkle on it. You heard it here first. You get it first. Hey, an interesting question came up in the chat, and it's Stephen, you're talking about change and evolution, and it was this idea that, you know, all of us are talking about, hey, we are doing this. All of us are kind of focused in this space. This is what we do. This is what we love and appreciate. How are we reaching the customers that are out there who aren't necessarily convinced, or who were holding on to fast fashion for, you know, till every last breath? What do you guys want to talk about, how you're reaching and maybe changing, converting minds, or getting people to kind of join your thought process on this?
Yeah. So first of all, we actually mentioned our resale report that we had to put on hold and shift. And we ran new data. So we're able to sort of look at a then and now perspective. And one of the things we found that's really encouraging is that people actually are even more open to, don't share this with anyone, but
Just among us.
People are actually more open to shopping secondhand and cleaning out their closets than they were before.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, like, the interesting thing is we try to be really realistic about ThredUp. We definitely drink our Kool-Aid a lot, but we know that not everyone out there cares about sustainability. So we do feel good about the fact that we offer other things that people care about right now. So maybe they're not cleaning out their closet because they want to keep things out of a landfill. Maybe they're cleaning out their closet because they want to earn a little bit of extra money, or just like something that makes them feel good to do something that's useful right now. But ultimately, we're all still meeting the same end, which is we're able to keep more clothes out of a landfill. And I also think that's the importance of these retailer partnerships, is like, when they see companies that they love, that they shop with, who are offering recycling, it sort of makes them realize, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't actually be throwing these things in the garbage. Maybe I should be a little bit more thoughtful about what I'm buying and how I'm disposing of it. And, you know, companies like Vans that are so beloved, talking about their sustainability initiatives, it's reaching such a broad audience of people who had never thought about sustainability before. And every building block of that makes people sort of like think about it in the back of their head. But I think ultimately you need all of it, right? You can't just offer sustainability, you can't just offer value, because the value thing is going to fall apart and the sustainability thing maybe isn't affordable or accessible enough. So you really need all of those things. And like, fashion should be fun. So you should be able to get the styles you want. It doesn't have to all look homogenous. It doesn't have to all be the same thing. But ultimately, consumers, we know, are going to gravitate more towards value through all of this when money is tight. And it's important to ensure that they have some responsible options that they can turn to.
Yeah, I like that analogy of this. It's an ecosystem that we have to build, and biodiversity is crucial. So it takes all moving parts. Kim, as Sam mentioned, for you guys, I feel like your customer, may not have come to Vans for looking for a sustainability brand, but I so agree that when you guys are talking about science-based targets or regenerative agriculture, even if that customer is not going to take a minute to stop and learn, they're going to hear it again and again and again until eventually, maybe they start to learn more. What's your take on converting customers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're right that most of our consumers don't come to Vans because we are the most sustainable they know of. But I think when they have questions, or those that do care about this and they do a little digging, they can see that we have our ducks in a row, and it's almost like it's table stakes. If you don't have it, it's a big risk, especially with Gen Z coming into kind of the target age group for Vans. So I think it's a long-term value proposition more than a immediate, like, are we converting consumers with this? If we do this, we'll get X amount more consumers. I don't think that's how we kind of look at it. It's a long-term brand health effort. And so, I think that's good for me because I'm able to focus on long-term things because we know that sustainability is a marathon, not a sprint. So that's how we sort of look at it, is long-term value.
Cool. Stephen, you mentioned long-term a bit as well, and I know it's come up a bit, but how about you converting customers? Are your customers already converted? Are they on board already?
Yeah, it's sort of funny. I think in the UK, our Beyond Retro stores, or in Sweden, our Beyond Retro stores. We know that the first thing we need to do is present as relevant a fashion offering as possible. And as the customer has the product in their shopping bag and leaving the store, that's when you say, oh, by the way, this was a sustainable choice. And like some of the best products that we've made, like the collaboration we did with made.com, which is, this Homewares collection made from secondhand denim. It's just a really attractive product. And I think the real fun thing, I don't know, and just, having this design bug in my head is not selling sustainability, but making a really engaging product from a sustainable thing. And that's a lot of fun, when you can sort of fall in love with things that are used, things that have patina. You can weave in some, Japanese sashiko denim repair, and you can make a really engaging product. I feel like I know that I know this is a sustainability panel, and that's what we should be focused on. But really, what occupies our day most of the time, and what gets me really, really excited, is about how can I make a sustainable offering, but how can I make a really engaging offering? How can I outsmart the other guy, and how can I do it through used? And that's and somehow that's what makes me jump out of my pajamas in the morning. And the real home run is when you put an offering out with a brand collaboration, in an hour and a half worldwide, it's gone. And you think, man, not only did we make a really cool product, it looked amazing, but we did it in a better way. I mean, and it's not that idea of a pre-COVID pinnacle. I think we were just on a long path to a more sustainable product as we get towards circularity but I feel like this idea of fashion relevance is the most important thing as a setup. And maybe Kim's words are better said, that, you know, that sustainability just allows you to have a stake at the table. But I'm really genuinely excited about making product from used, and because of that, it makes it a more exciting product. I don't know if that sentence makes any sense. But.
Yeah, well, it does, because we know though, and what your point though, to design and making sure, you know, what drives consumer purchases are still quality, aesthetics, value that they're getting, and then somewhere down along the line, it's like, oh, and it was a sustainable choice, but we know that people want it and they desire it, but what initially attracts them right away and makes them make that purchase most likely is the design and the allure of that great product. So that's the challenge that we have. And then underneath the hood, like Kim had said too, that's where sustainability lies. And if they may not even know they're getting it until they dive a little bit deeper.
And I think too, just Stephen, something that's been really interesting for me is this idea of creativity born out of constraint. And we're all feeling very constrained right now in every aspect of our businesses and our lives. And I think that there's a lot of creativity and some really interesting ideas that are coming out of it.
Yeah, so this could be one of the best times, and that's my hope, is that this is a positive, and that we come out of this in a renewed way, and there's a rebirth and a re-energized kind of approach. And maybe for that, on that point too, one of the questions that came in earlier from our audience, you know, before we started, was this is a college student, and so looking forward, based on what we're thinking the future will be, what advice would you give to college students who want to enter the sustainable fashion sphere during an uncertain time like this? I think we've all alluded to, hey, we're confident this will still be there, but especially now, whether are you hiring, are they getting into the right thing? What words of encouragement maybe do you have for them? Sam, you want to start? I see you nodding your head.
Sure. I think so. I'll take some words out of our founder and CEO, James Reinhart's mouth. He was talking about this recently. ThredUp was founded in the midst of the last recession. We were founded in 2009. It was a scary time to start a business, and it made sense and it worked. And here we are 10 years later. So I think that this is an excellent time to start your business. The world needs more innovative, sustainable solutions. And it can be a really amazing opportunity, especially if you look at some of the larger companies that are trying to stay afloat right now. And it can be a really exciting time to come in and steal some of that market share.
Yeah.
So,
cool. Anybody else?
I would say study biodiversity, become an expert on how to measure it. Because I think in the next couple of years, as I said before, that's going to be an important thing that large companies and brands like Vans are going to be looking at.
That's a great point, Kim. And I always tease myself, right? Because I've spent so many years as a sustainability professional, but I didn't have a science background. And all of us, so we're talking about science and we're understanding the importance of science. And there, I think, definitely is this convergence of, okay, there's this realization that, yeah, we need experts in science and biodiversity and, you know, biology and such. So great point. Stephen, how about you? Advice?
Man, my advice is going to be really wrong because I spent a lot of time at the pub in college. So I recommend everybody spend a lot of time at the pub. But beyond that, bizarrely enough, I see the real opportunities for tomorrow in the waste bins of today. And so my second place is hang out in the pub, but then go to your local thrift store, go on a ThredUp and look at the product there and see the opportunities from things that exist. You know, because the beginning of circularity is to understand that the garments that are in front of us right now, you know, there's this concept of not being able to unscramble the omelet, but I feel like at least we got to know what the omelet is. I think Kim's answer is probably a lot more responsible, but I actually feel that standing in the waste bin of today, you can understand a lot of the opportunities in front of us. So there you go. My two things is go to the pub and go to the waste bin.
Edward, those are words to live by for sure. Those are good ones.
Don't go
I
to
like
the
those.
pub right now.
So what was that, Sam?
Don't go to the pub right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you
right.
go. You have a Zoom pub. Sorry. Yeah.
Zoom pub.
Well, I know that we're getting to our hour mark, and okay, I'll let you dive in jump in if you want to. But also, any last words that you guys want to throw in from your brand side perspective?
I feel like we really covered it. Thank you, Derek and Kim and Stephen and Akil. It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Green Story for having us. Kim, you want to add anything?
No, just thank you so much. And, I think we'll get to the other side of this. And I think, it'll be better than it was before. So there's a lot of pain and suffering going on right now, but I do see the future as being brighter than it was.
I love that. Let's stay positive. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I think, I appreciate it both Kim and Sam and Derek. This has been a lot of fun. I actually think that everybody's taken a pause, and we're going to come out of this and we're going to think about and be a little bit more mindful. And I actually see a really exciting future in front on the sustainability point. But just generally in humanity, I think there's something significant that's happened, and that's going to change the way in which we interact with each other, which frankly I think is a wonderful thing.
I think so too, and I'm with you. And I hope that's true, and I think it will be. And big thanks to all our panelists. You guys, thank you for taking the time out of your spaces. And Stephen, get back out there to the snow, do some snow play for us. Kim, the beaches are open, so maybe get a beach break or something. I don't know. Keep safe, everybody. Akil, Green Story team, do you guys want to jump in? Is there any last words that you guys have for us?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, wow. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing panel, such a great discussion. And also thank you for the audience for sharing so many of the questions, some of the discussions. Yeah, especially like on colleges and universities, going to the bar, always very important. Hopefully we'll all be able to do at some point. So I just have a few things to note. Of course, apart from a big thank you from the whole panel. Also, thank you for the amazing audience for coming. We had close to 150 people coming in for this of the 300 odd registered. So I'm assuming everybody kind of got a chance to listen in as they were going in and out throughout the hour. We had a ton of questions, I know, and of course, we didn't have the time to go through all of them. So I will be passing this on to all the panelists and hopefully answering them online over the next week or two. So do please keep an eye out on our social media and also on the other panels, because a lot of these topics that we covered today will be deep diving on them for a few of the upcoming panels. So a quick reminder, based off that, we have 5 more presentations and panels this week. And tomorrow is one by our very own Anita Toma of Green Story, and it's an overview of sustainable supply chains and preferred fibers. It starts at 1 p.m. EST. And if you haven't already registered for these amazing panels, please do so, as each of these will elaborate more on the topics we discussed here. And you can see the link on the screen to register, or you can go back to your emails. You would have got a link for that as well. But again, thank you so much for the panels, and thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.